All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. We've come across many books, many different materials that talk to us about reaching our goals, pushing our limits, finding our limits, transforming our lives. But personally, not many of them stand out for me. And I recently came across a book called Unlimited, written by Jason Dunn. And I found that this book, it had different facets to it, which for me personally, I related to because it was very real life, and it was about his life. And I don't want to talk about it too much. I really want to leave it I really want you to hear it from the horse's mouth, but there are things I don't want to talk. I'm so excited to touch on in this episode about transformation, self-realization, what these words actually mean in real life. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael, I'm delighted. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure, Jason. And to be honest with you, I wanted to explain these words. I wanted to get into it. You do it so well, and you've lived these experiences, which I think really helps when you're writing about something like this, or when you are doing public speaking and you're talking to hundreds or thousands of people about it. But before we get into that, for those that don't know about your story and those that maybe haven't seen or heard of the book, can you maybe give a little bit of a background about yourself? Because for you, the journey hasn't always been smooth, and there's many things in the past that I think have led you to where you are today.
Sure. So Michael, when you reach the ripe old age of 60, you definitely recognize and accept that life isn't smooth at all. And certainly it hasn't been smooth at all for me, but that determines who you are and how you respond to the challenges or the setbacks or the failures. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but that determines who you are. And you do need those things to appreciate the polar opposite of failure and, a whole bunch of other circumstances. So maybe I can just kind of start intuitively from the beginning without telling the whole story. So a brief synopsis was that I reached the ripe old age of 34, and I kept saying to people that I could have done certain things. I could have been great, if you like. Well, specifically, I used to tell people all the time that I could have been a professional soccer player, when in truth, perhaps I could have been, but I wasn't. So at the age of 15, in the UK, I had an offer for an apprenticeship with a first division club, pretty big risk. I was studying, obviously, at school, and I thought it was too much of a risk. There was a lot of traveling involved. And so I made a decision that I would pursue my education, and kind of that was that. And that was a huge thing for me, because when you grow up in England and you're a boy, then most of your waking moments are consumed by thinking about playing football or soccer, as we know it in Australia. And I used to play 3 or 4 games every single week, played a pretty serious level. So it was a big choice for me. So I proceeded to tell everyone for the next 20 years that I could have, until I actually got to the point that I looked in the mirror or I listened to myself and I didn't like what I heard anymore. So I knew it was time to change. I'd been aware for a long time that it was time to change. I didn't quite know how. I didn't know what it was that I needed to change to, or what it was that I needed to achieve, but I was searching, and I was uncomfortable with my legacy. In fact, I sort of frame it up now that I was so uncomfortable. I didn't own my legacy. My life was kind of busy, and family and career, and I didn't really have a purpose. And I knew that I was heading for a point somewhere in the future where my legacy would own me. I wouldn't own my legacy. I actually call this now, though I've called it for a couple of decades now, the armchair test, which is kind of the motivation, or if you like, of why you should change. And because of being in financial advice for, as you know, nearly four decades, I've seen a lot of people arrive in retirement and struggle because they haven't necessarily planned their life, or they kind of got all the time in the world and they look back and they have massive regret. Now, some things you kind of you can't change at that point in time, but they have massive regret about the things they let slip past, opportunities, things they didn't do that they could have done. And so I had this epiphany or awakening, and it was the armchair test, which was, what do you really want to look back at when you're sitting there at 65, Jason? How do you want to feel about your life, or how do you want to feel about what you've done or what you haven't done, and how do you change it? So that was the catalyst, if you like, for me to undergo some pretty massive transformation. And I realized that a lot of it was about fear. And I've definitely since learned, and I fully recognize that most people never fulfill their real potential because they're caught up in fear. We can come back and talk about it a little bit more shortly in its rightful place, but they're fearful. And so I had two big fears. My two big fears were, and in some ways still are, but I've learned to work with them. And the key to success is learning to work with the things that you fear, because fear doesn't always go away. You just become more comfortable with it. I had a fear of drowning, so I couldn't swim. I couldn't swim a lap of a pool. I couldn't put my head underwater because of my fear of drowning. And failure, which is, publicly how people see you not succeeding, especially kind of when you put yourself out there. So they were the two big ones. And a friend of mine worked at a large corporate, and a friend of mine invited me one day to participate in a triathlon, which I kind of heard about a triathlon. I knew you probably need to bike, swim, and run. It was a corporate one, a very large corporate one. And I just thought, hey, yeah, okay, that'll be all right. Because I smoke a packet of cigarettes a day, and I had done for almost 20 years, and drank lots of alcohol as well along the way, courtesy of my corporate career. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll give that a go. But what I didn't realize, because there was three of us in the team, I just thought I'd be doing the run, was that I'd actually be doing all three. And, I talk a lot in the book about how I suddenly realized that, had to face into that huge fear, and how, to start with, I kind of had 13 weeks to prepare, and I'd go to the swimming pool and I'd sit inside my car for 15 minutes outside the pool, trying to psych myself into going in and trying to swim a lap, as opposed to turning the ignition on and getting the hell out of there. So, but it was interesting. The kind of reflection immediately for me was, Jason, this is a huge turning point in your life. And if you don't do this, if you don't give this your best shot, you know what? You're never going to do it with anything. This is the test for you. You're never going to do it with anything. So I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but first I had to try and teach myself how to swim 25 meters, and then 50, create confidence, et cetera, et cetera. I did the race. I did the triathlon event, and I did nearly drown, and I did panic. But hey, I made it through. And by the way, I hadn't ridden a bike since I was a kid, riding up and down the street in the UK. So there was so much adrenaline, and this massive weight had been lifted, and I just felt incredible. And it was the most amazing drug. And I knew I really wanted more. And kind of for a couple of weeks, I was lost, wondering what I did to actually, recapture this incredible feeling. And I sat down on the couch one day. I still smoked, and I sat down on the couch in the days when it was acceptable to sit inside your house and smoke inside, with a cup of coffee, watching the wide world of sports. And this kind of really curious event came on that I'd heard about, which was the Hawaii Ironman World Championships. And for those of you that haven't heard of that, it is a 3.8 kilometer ocean swim. It's a 180 kilometer non-drafting bike leg. And then it's a marathon, so 42.2 kilometer run on the big island of Kona. It's probably one of the most legendary, iconic endurance events on the planet. And to get to it, you actually have to qualify in your age group amongst the best in the world across, there's, many, many events. There's 80 or 90 or 50,000 people try and get into the Hawaii Ironman each year, and only about 1,600 get in. So it's the best of the best. And I finished watching it and I went, right, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to qualify for the Hawaii Ironman World Championship. I've got no idea how I'm going to do it, but I really, really, really want that. And so that's how it all really started to change and the process of transformation began.
Yeah, I love that because you went from being scared and like what you said, you were caught up in fear. And for us, I think we do things and sometimes we don't realize that we do them because we're caught up in fear. Because like I'll talk to a client about anything. It could be something as simple about talking about money. And I'll realize that they're scared about talking about money. And then I'll realize that they don't talk to their partner about money. And then we'll figure out together that this is half the issue. And once you figure out the problem, you know what to work on. But I love that you went from that to actually wanting to do something like Ironman. And by the way, I'm someone that doesn't like, I know how to swim. I'm a great swimmer. But I can't breathe and swim at the same time. So therefore, I can't swim more than 10 meters or 15 meters. So by then, I'm normally puffed out because I've been holding my breath the whole time.
I know that feeling, and I did that. I mean, I used to have to put a nose clip on my nose just so that I could just begin to manage it. And the excitement was there. But you know what? The fear actually never completely went away. And even, I raced 14 Ironman races around the world, and I think it was even in the 12th one, Michael, where I panicked. And this is not a nice, comfortable, waveless swimming pool with a side. You're amongst 1,500 people in open water, all about to go at the same time, with arms and legs thrashing and getting hit in the head, pushed underwater. And even in my 12th Ironman, I panicked and swam sideways. I just wanted to get out. I just wanted out of this thing. But I had one of the daily practices that has been so essential for me in creating, for me, my limitless mindset, my belief that actually, you know what, I'm going to give anything a go, and I can achieve anything, not because it makes me better than anyone else, but because I believe in me. And it's only relevant to me. And so, what that technique was, how do you make a decision in 4 seconds so that you don't let either fear and or procrastination convince you out of the decision that you've made, that you've spent years doing. So 4-second rule is a big thing for me. And I'm kind of happy to also come back and talk about that daily practices. But there's a whole bunch of things in life that if you get up and deliberately practice them every day, they just become second nature, and they just become habits. And you actually get to the point that, often you draw on them occasionally at the right time, but you actually, you start to get very good at them, and they completely change your mindset, absolutely completely change, whether it's how do you create perspective and not sweat the small stuff? How do you find gratitude? And let me tell you, gratitude is the easiest thing in the world to find. How do you cut words out of your mindset that hold you back, that are highly negative and toxic? And you know what? They create how other people, see you and think about you as well. So how do you take those words out? How do you set goals that are really meaningful goals that are aligned to your purpose? So how do you create your purpose, which was something I didn't have. And I've, since then, I've always had a purpose or purposes, and they can be, multifaceted. They could be family, personal, career, whatever it is. You can have 2 or 3 of them going at the same time. But how do you set goals that they might be 5 or 10 years away? They might be enormous. And, qualifying for the Hawaii Ironman for a guy that couldn't swim and couldn't ride a bike and smoke a packet of cigarettes, qualifying against the best athletes in the world was a pretty big goal. So, I gave myself 5 to 6 years to do that, because before that, I had to actually compete in a half Ironman to qualify for the Australian Ironman, to try and qualify in an Ironman for the Hawaii Ironman. So I broke that down. So, another daily practice for me was living your life with a 90-day high performance template that actually keeps rolling, and you work backwards from your goals. So, and let me tell you, this is the same in finance and savings, particularly for retirement. Yeah, you need to think about what it is, your purpose, and what your goals, really be sharp and crystallize your goals. And they might be 10 years away. What you actually need to do is bring that back with a process that enables you to be really clear about what you need to get up and do on that specific day, and just worry about that. And if you get up and you have the discipline to do that one thing, you're going to nail the thing in 5 years or 10 years. So you can take away that big, ominous goal that you can't quite see how you're going to achieve it, and create the confidence that, if you save enough today and you invest it like this, in 25 years' time, you're going to have enough money to live exactly how you want to live the rest of your life from retirement when you got all the time. So a 90-day high performance plan, I've lived by that. And I work backwards from that 5-year goal to go, right, Jason, what do you need to get up? When you get up tomorrow, what are you going to do? And all you then need to do is be relentless about doing what it is that you need to do on that day. And I was relentless, Michael. And in finally writing my book at almost 60, I, kind of look back and go, you know what? I was hospitalized 35 times, and a bunch of those were truly life-threatening. I was close to death. And or could have been easily killed. And, but there was no setback that was great enough for me not to get up and do what I need to do. I had times where, once I've been hit by 3 trucks, at different times, and a car. One of them, which was the least serious, I tore a couple of layers of skin off all of my back and all of my backside. And, I had holes in my arms. You could see the bones, my elbows. And 8 days later, I was out in Queensland and I was running shirtless with synthetic skin on my back because I had to do it. I knew I needed to do it. I kind of had 8 days off, most of which I was kind of backwards and forwards to hospital. But I need to do it to get back on track to what I needed to achieve. So I just felt there were no excuses. I got to tell you, I never, ever didn't complete a training session that I planned to do unless it was not humanly possible. And I would do things, like I traveled a fair bit in my corporate career in financial advice as a, GM and a CEO. Sometimes I'd sort of fly somewhere and I'd get to the airport and I'd just put my backpack on and I'd just run home because I needed a training session. Or I go to a corporate event and at 10 o'clock at night, I'd disappear into the bathroom and I'd stick my running gear on and I'd run home. There've been times when I've swam in a little hotel, 12-meter pool. I've had to swim 4 kilometers. Whatever it is, there are times when I've, with my children, my youngest son, when I've taken him at, 6 o'clock in the morning because he woke up at 5:30 or 5, and I take him for a 21-kilometer run in the stroller. So you just do what it is that you need to do. He loved it, by the way. He, there he was at 2 years of age, and he'd be out first thing in the morning in Budrum. So it was pretty good, pretty nice temperature, and he waving and high-fiving all the locals going for their morning walk. So there are no excuses.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. Oh, I wanted to ask you just about fear. You mentioned controlling fear. How do you control fear? And just before we started recording, you and I were just talking about it in the green room. But just the idea of controlling fear. We were talking about public speaking, and But what's your take on that? How would you say if someone asked you, how do I control my fear? What would you say? And you mentioned a 4-second exercise. I don't know if this relates to it, but if you can sort of touch on that as well, if you haven't already. But
okay,
because I don't know if what you mentioned was the 4-second exercise, but something like that to me sounds great because it's something that anyone can sort of do anytime.
Absolutely. So they're kind of they're interchangeable. The 4-second rule is interchangeable with fear and procrastination. So let me just go back briefly to fear. I don't believe you ever get rid of like really big fears. And you know what? Fear is a healthy thing. So if you're a presenter, fear is a good thing because it makes you realize what it is that you need to do. You need to become more confident so that your brain, operates properly. You don't say stuff or you say what it is you want to say. You communicate a message. So you work with fear, and what you do is you just gradually become more confident. And your confidence is you're knowing that you're not going to die. People aren't going to laugh at you when you're on stage because you've done this 150 times before and no one did that before. And you're actually better than when you started. So the fear part is continually creating an experience that enables your brain to accept that, what you think is the worst outcome is not going to happen. So you don't get rid of it, but you face it. And I've tried to teach people a lot throughout my career about facing fear, and that, if you kind of if something scares you, if you're sitting there in a room full of people and, you're in a kind of workshop with your peers and someone says, hey, come up and let's do a role play. Who wants to come up? Most people will look down at the table and your fear accelerates. You go, don't pick me, don't pick me, don't pick me. But you know what? If you actually look up and just stick your hand up within 4 seconds and go, yeah, I'll do it. Guess what? Your fear goes away. Or at least you become more confident and you just get up out of your seat and you walk up the front. And what you're actually saying to yourself is, you know what? I'm not frightened of this. And people will respect you for that. And people will respect you for that courage. You know what? You perform completely differently. So that's kind of where the two actually intersect. But what it means is you choose to walk forward into a new place as opposed to returning to where you feel safe. And you know what? When you do that and you feel safe, you're not. And you will never get anywhere near close to realizing your full potential, or as I say, your limitless potential, which is not about being better than other people. It's about saying to yourself, you know what? I can do this. I can do more. I wonder what I can do. I wonder how far I can push my limits. So if that makes sense. So let me just that makes sense. Let me just go and cover the 4-second rule. So human brain works in really interesting ways. I'm going to talk more about what I understand. I'm not a technician. So I can talk about how, I found that my brain works. And I reckon I worked pretty hard and I've done okay in life. And, but I was nowhere near being the best that I could be. And that's what became really important to me. And that's because, out of 35,000 decisions that supposedly we make each day, there's a whole bunch of discretionary ones, which it's fairly easy to actually take the easier road. That type of discretionary decision, which is like, I'll go home a bit earlier as opposed to working half an hour later, or I'll get to that tomorrow. And I have a firm belief that you got to do everything today. Tomorrow never comes. It just never, ever comes. There is only ever today. And that is absolutely one of my non-negotiable philosophies is you got to do it today because you'll just push it off and make excuses for tomorrow. And so, it is about how do you just keep doing, what you say you're going to do, and don't allow your brain the option of thinking about an easier or a tougher road, Michael. And people do this a lot with exercise, which, obviously requires effort. Let me give you my best example of the 4-second rule. Often, especially during winter, you wake up, it's cold, dark, the alarm goes off pretty early, because if you're going to train twice a day, I've trained twice a day between 2 and 6 hours a day for the last 25 years. When you wake in a day, your brain does a few things. So typically what it'll do is think about what it is you got to do during the day. And if you do that, which most people do, it influences actually how you feel and your mindset. So I learned first thing is, if you can change that mindset, practice it every day. When you wake up in the morning, think about what it is that you have to be grateful for in life. And let me tell you, I talk a lot about gratitude and how you can actually create gratitude. There are so many things that all of us have to be grateful for. So I would practice doing that. And actually, regardless of what was in my day, I actually felt really good. I felt really positive and I felt grateful, which created instantly a positive mindset. So then the 4-second rule specifically was, sometimes, even if you didn't get to that thinking, what would happen is, your brain goes, oh, it's cold outside. It's really early. It's dark and it's warm in here. Okay. That is the kind of perfect storm to talk yourself out of getting out of bed and doing it quickly and then going out into the cold, maybe for a swimming pool session or a bike session or whatever it is. So I didn't allow my brain the time to consider, the less, the more attractive or comfortable option. I would make a decision in 4 seconds, because what I knew was that once I got out of bed and I was in motion, that I would feel more positive, and that, I knew that once I was 5 minutes into a pool session or a run, I would feel so grateful that I actually made that decision, because my brain was going, the endorphins were pumping, and I just felt great. And that is very typical of exercise. And what you need to do is actually imagine how you're going to feel, projecting yourself forward, imagining how you're going to feel if you actually, have the discipline to do something as opposed to not doing something. So that's kind of the 4-second rules. Don't just make a decision in 4 seconds. Don't allow your brain to talk you out of doing something that requires effort. And also there's another daily practice or a technique is, in races, and I went from kind of a 10-hour Ironman race later in my kind of career, I converted to, extreme ultra endurance running. And, sometimes that meant running over mountains at altitude nonstop for more than 24 hours or a couple of days. Is during that time, your mind is going to convince you that this is bonkers, and you're going to ask you, it's going to say to you, why is it that you're doing this? Why are we doing this? This really hurts. And as the hours tick on and it becomes more and more uncomfortable and extreme, that question gets asked more and more frequently during a race, to the point that it convinces you there is no way you can put one foot in front of another anymore. And this is just madness, and just go home. And wouldn't it be more comfortable sitting in your hotel room or whatever? So I evolved that technique of projecting myself forward to think about how I would feel in 6 hours' time if I was sitting with my family in a hotel room and I'd quit, as opposed to if I found the courage just to keep going. And I imagine those two emotions, because they're really, really strong emotions. And I have failed before, by the way, when you're sitting in a hotel room and you've trained, everyone's given up a lot for a whole year, and that means 1,000 hours of extreme exercise just in that year to get to that event. Is you imagine how gutted you'll feel sitting there in that hotel room. And that's what I used to do one of the ways when I was desperate to give myself the motivation to just keep going, even if it meant that I wasn't going to qualify for Hawaii or achieve my absolute goal that day, let me tell you, it is essential to finish. However you finish, just finish, whether you walk or you crawl or you don't run, whatever, you just got to finish. So that's another technique.
Well, I love that you highlight that because you're right. That 4 second rule, I think I do it subconsciously because I just make decisions, which sometimes comes back and bites me in the butt. But a lot of the time, it actually leads me to making a good decision because you're right. You can think about anything too much and you'll talk yourself out of it. Like
Yeah.
even from drinking a cup of water, you could go to drink a cup of water and suddenly think, oh, hold on a second. If you really want to think about drinking a cup of water, I think, oh my God, imagine the toxins in this water. What about the cup? What about the stuff I've cleaned it with? Well, hold on a second. Is it really going to drink this water right now? I could be doing something else right now. Why am I drinking?
Yeah.
So anything really is something as simple as that. If you really think about it long enough, and we love talking ourselves out of things, don't we? It's like, yeah, gym membership,
We
having a
do.
gym membership and not going,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
talking yourself out of seeing someone, whether it's a financial planner or anyone about your money, or whether it's
Absolutely.
anything. And we're so good at it, aren't we? Like we're so creative
We are.
when it comes to
So,
coming up with
yeah.
things.
And a couple of really important realizations for me over the many decades is that overthinking is one of the greatest causes of A, procrastination, B, anxiety and stress, and and building fear, and that translates across to financial advice. So again, as I said, I've been in financial advice for 3.5 decades. I've sat in on thousands of meetings, either as a coach, a leader, or originally as an advisor. And you know what, Michael, it's really interesting because 9 out of 10 people in Australia don't get financial advice every year, yet everyone can benefit significantly from getting financial advice. And and it usually takes an interaction with another human being to convince someone to actually go and take some action and identify they actually do need some help, whereas everyone needs help. And one of the reasons, I found that people often don't go is that, that they're aware somewhere they're going to have to make a commitment and some sort of sacrifice. And whatever it is in life, if you do not make a commitment and you do not have some sacrifice, you are never going to get to where it is, or the best place. You're never going to achieve an optimum outcome. And so people kind of get really busy and they go through life, and there's so many things to do, raising family and career and paying bills. And then one day, and I've seen this 100,000 times, people get to the largest single financial event of their life, which is actually losing their income, and which they haven't practiced. They haven't worked on it for 30 or 40 years, and they are nowhere near where it is that they need to be because
Exactly.
they didn't understand, or maybe they kind of did, but you know what? They didn't go because they knew they were going to listen to a professional that would advise them, where their trajectory, and then advise them that, you know what, you need to save some more, and this is how you should do it. This is the most effective way to do it. So they kind of just get busy with living, and then it's like a cliff. It's an income cliff that it's not like, people are suddenly sacrificing going without 10% of their income. And when you talk to people, when in their 30s about saving 10% of their income, they kind of go, wow, how do I do that? And then you go, well, you know what, if you're not going to, if you can't do that, how are you going to cope with, sacrificing 60% when you stop working and you're on a 30-year holiday and you've got all the time in the world to do anything and everything you want, but you just haven't got enough money to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is like I like there's the thought of being scared to talk to people. There's talking ourselves out of things. You mentioned the
Absolutely.
4 second rule. You've mentioned the 90-day high performance plan. But I want to ask you like I guess the big question, and you've answered parts of this already. But what does unlimited mean? And the reason I'm asking this question is because your book says it's the art of being limitless. Now, being obviously, not obviously, one would assume we all have limits. There's only certain things we can do. But are we limited? And I really want you to, if you could just sort of
Mm.
dig into that word.
Yeah.
And I guess probably why you call the book that as well. And
Yeah.
just I guess someone listening to this, if they're listening and they're like, you know what, like this guy has a few good points. Maybe I have been limiting myself too much. And he or she starts following some of the things you've mentioned. Like, what's the end goal? Like, what is being limitless?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't have a view or anything in terms of research because I don't think there is such a thing as to, how many people limit their potential or their capability because they don't believe they can do something. But my definition of being unlimited is creating your own confidence and belief that you are unlimited. And that doesn't mean say one day you just be able to flap your wings and fly, but it means unlimiting or unshackling or unlimiting your mind so that you have a belief that you can continue to be better. And that is not about being best. And again, the point that I sort of realized, about why so many people sitting in audiences listening to incredible, an Olympian that's been training since they were 10 years of age every day is, you get a person that's 40 sitting in the audience that goes, oh yeah, wow, that's incredible. But they walk away and go, I'm 40 and I've got a family that I look after and I've got a busy career. So they kind of just stop because they know they can't be the best. They know they can't be this person. But all that's relevant is what you do and you achieve and how you feel about you. And ultimately, I guess, what other people feel about you. But it's just unshackling your mind because it doesn't happen instantly. For me, it didn't happen instantly, Michael. So I had to swim 300 meters, ride 6 kilometers, and run 3 kilometers to unshackle and start to open my mind that I could do it. And you know what else can I do? And that's when you begin your pathway, your journey towards your own limitlessness and unlimiting your own mind. So that's what you are doing is you're unshackling it. You're kind of going, well, whether it's my upbringing or society or my career or whatever, what people tell me, whatever, you know what? I'm going to put all of that aside because I believe that I can do more and I can believe that I continue to achieve more or be better. Now, that might be, financially, it might be charitable, might be whatever, but we and society limit ourselves considerably. And it is about creating gradually the belief that you can do better. And that grows to the point that you actually think that, yeah, why wouldn't I have a go at that? That is enormous. But you know what? I've just learned that I didn't think I could do this. And actually I did it. And you know what? My confidence and my belief has grown. So you know what? Actually, I could probably do that as well. And it is just how you gradually create belief and confidence and unshackle your mind. And Michael, I've I've done things even since then. As I progressively go along, and I can't always see the solution. I'll see what it is that I want to do, and I go, well, my experience tells me I've got all these daily practices that are now instinctive, and if I've got a 90-day plan, I can work backwards and create the confidence that I can get to that massive thing. I just need to find a way. And let me tell you that, my purpose when I started writing Unlimited wasn't about making money. It still isn't about making money. In fact, I kind of accepted that, there's a lot of time invested and a lot of, you put a lot of money into it and go, you know what, I could actually make a significant loss on this book. But my purpose in many ways has kind of always been to help other people grow because I found my own way to grow myself and to experience and achieve incredible things. I just want to give a piece of that to someone else. I want to, I've always tried to work with people and you have to have the will, by the way. It's hard to, it's challenging to work with someone and create the will. I don't want to inspire people out of apathy, if you like. I want to find people who actually do want to change and do better. And they just go, you know what? help me, give me a little bit of a push. Show me how I can do that. Show me how I can create the belief. That's who I kind of want to work with. And I've always done that. I've seen people do just remarkable things. And it is this is the most incredible transformation I've ever seen. The most kind of one of the most wondrous human things is if you go talk to somebody, for instance, that just ran their first marathon, if you'd asked them 2 years before, can you, do you think you can run a marathon? You know what? They would have said you were bonkers, just the same as 2 years before. In fact, a year before I completed my first Ironman. You imagine, pack a cigarette a day smoker that quite liked to drink, or two or three, busy corporate career, couldn't ride a bike and couldn't swim. If you'd said to me, Michael, you've said, Jason, do you reckon you could do an Ironman? I would have said you were absolutely raving mad. And that is exactly the same thing for almost every person I've seen that achieves something remarkable, because they do go through this transformation of achieving something they thought was impossible. Now, that might be in business. It might be, playing the piano. It might be doing your first 10-kilometer run. It doesn't matter what it is, because all that's relevant, all that matters is what's relevant to you. But it is that awakening and this wondrous, transformational, inspiring, outcome of people achieving something that they believed was impossible. And that is why I wrote this book. That's why I'm here talking to you, is because becoming unlimited is just literally removing the limitations you have around what it is you think you can't do and you can't achieve. And again, in my book, I talk about words that I removed decades ago from my vocabulary, and they are words like can't, hard, disappointment. They're words that just drag, or hate. Let me tell you, hate is a word that is used indiscriminately by anyone and everyone everywhere. And for the most, insignificant things that happen in a day, like the bus is, 2 minutes late. Someone says I hate it this morning. I hate it when the bus is 2 minutes late. Really? Really? Is that how you feel about a bus that's 2 minutes late? Let me tell you, there's places in the world where, kids have to walk 20 kilometers to school or to go and get water, and you're moaning about hating the bus being too late. You've just created this massive negative mindset for yourself for the day. So it is about unshackling your mind and creating belief. And the thing that I love the most, and let me tell you, I think I talked to you before about this, I had my own fear about, I'm a private person that doesn't go on social media. I hadn't been on Facebook for 13 years until a little while ago. I'm having to put my whole life out there in this book, or pretty much most of it, and go out on social media all of the time. And that has been, a significant moment of discomfort for me in getting outside of my comfort zone. But I just knew I needed to do it. And, we're 5-6 weeks after launching it. Every single day, I think I was sharing with you, someone comes back to me, whether it's a friend or someone I don't know, I've never met before, and sends me a wonderful message about, what they're enjoying or loving or getting out of, the book and my story. And every single one of those, even on its own, makes everything I've done worthwhile.
I love it, Jason. And I love the angle that you've taken. I love the inspiration, and I encourage anyone listening to this to get a copy of the book and to touch base with Jason. And Jason, if you can, maybe for those that want to learn about your story, your journey, and to even get a copy of the book, or to even get in contact with you, what would you say would be the best way for them to do that?
So thank you. That's a great question. There's only, if you really want to change, you've got to take some action. So the action is, Unlimited is available on a couple of platforms, but the main one is Amazon and Amazon Books. You can search on Amazon Books for Unlimited or Jason Lee, Lee Dunn, Dunn, or you can go Google Jason Lee Dunn Unlimited. That will bring it up. You can find me on few social media platforms, but my main one is LinkedIn. So if you would like to connect with me there, and you can message me there, I'm happy to give you an email. So if you want to email me, you can email me on jldunnlimited@gmail.com.
Yeah, I'll put the website in the description of this as well,
Yeah. Okay.
of the
Fantastic.
episode, just to make it easier for people.
Yep. Happy to talk to anyone, share, happy to send you, 90-day high performance plan template, whatever it is. I just
So
want
good,
to help
Jace.
people.
I could see your passion, honestly, and or not see, but I could feel your passion, I should say, and I can hear your passion. And with my episodes, I like to finish off with a dad joke. Every episode needs a dad joke, and you talked about swimming earlier. Now, there's a swimming dad joke, which is probably one of the worst jokes that I've ever heard. But it's one of those ones that never leaves my mind at all.
Yep.
You probably know the answer to this, and anyone listening to this probably knows the answer. But what did the ocean say to the swimmer?
No idea.
Nothing. It just waved. So
That's a great one.
It's an oldie. Like for me, it's an oldie. It's one of the first. It's probably one of the first I heard, or one of the first that stuck in my head. But
I love it.
But I just started with dad jokes.
I'm definitely a dad. Yeah, but I can never remember them. I love laughing at them.
Oh, they're great, and I mean, I think I started with these things because I just used to love telling jokes, but all my jokes just happened to be dad jokes even before I became a dad, because my sense of humor is just different and special. And I think
it's great. I love it.
And yeah, some people say, some people probably think half the reason I started this podcast show is just to be able to tell my jokes. You know what? It's part of the reason. There you go. I can
relate to that. Absolutely relate to that.
No, thank you so much for your time, Jace. I really appreciate it so much.
Michael,
it's been
Thank you.
It's been such a good episode, and I encourage anyone listening to this to get a copy of the book, check out Jason's work, and keep doing the amazing things that you're doing, Jace. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I've had a great time. Thanks, Michael.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.